Sometimes the riot is a quiet one, or the battle is to love yourself and function in society where voices of reason are muted by anxiety, like gaining notoriety is selling your soul. So we tend to go no deeper than the shallow water level, trying to keep us overhead in the face of all the slurs and the stares, mentally frozen, paralyzed by fear of failure and success. So we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and they're babbling, but the baby's in the bath and the stash under the bed on my head, spinning from the circles and the puppets and the strings that they pull. Then we move. Reactionary warfare never produces winners on the field. Feeble and foolish. What tools and what weapons are we using? We need some new ones. Real revolution. It's real solutions. What we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution. Where my inner me really a mirror for the galaxy. New time, brand new paradigms, new contracts to sign. They thought that this would all be televised, though it's happening right before our very eyes. It's on the inside, with their guns cocked. When that rock drops, standing on the rooftop, praying that the mountaintop can live inside the valley. People tell me the reward is somewhere off in heaven, like heaven's only in the sky. Like chariots are swinging, like God is something separate from yourself, from your wealth, from your lover, from your neighbor. Oh, your savior is coming in your own name, coming with the face the same. Real revolution. It's real solutions. Where we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution. Where my enemy is really a mirror for the galaxy. And so we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and they're babbling, but the baby's in the bath and the stash under the bed. Oh, my head spinning from the circles and the puppets and the strings they pull. Then we move. Reactionary warfare never produces winners on the field. Feeble and foolish. What tools and what weapons are we using? We need some new ones. It's real revolution. Producing real solutions. Because we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Real revolution. Where my enemy is really a mirror for the galaxy. Grandmama used to pray, oh Lord, please save them from the evil snares and all the dangers that entangle. Yea, though they walking through the valley of the shadows, just prepare and make them fit for every battle. Because I know they bound to come, and I know they bound to fall, but in your bounty, Lord, preserve their beautiful. Right, we still surviving off of grandma's prayers, surrounded by the jungle and the lion's den. Tread light, cause these traps isn't conspicuous. They hide right in plain sight, thinking we don't see them when they linger. Look right beneath the surface, then leave a trail of corpses. Crisis, prices, your life a disposable commodity. Like living in a fantasy, conditioned to believe that the system even cares. Whether selling CDs or walking or driving or reading, look, they don't even need a reason. It's just you breathing and being black. When it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all, at all. It's just a GMO dream, where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty, cause this pretty city got me screaming bloody murder. So city got me screaming. This gritty city got me on some. Look, get your hand up on my pocket. Distraction, so lazy they use the same tactics. Like condom with some trinkets, just don't let them get to thinking. That light bulb gets a blinking. You know niggas and ideas. Oh dear, my dear, you may not know me, but I know you very well. Foresight, they say hindsight is 2020. Well, tell me something, we gotta see that history is on repeat. And maybe it takes the beat and the melody to speak a little louder than the message in the clouds or the essence in the air. I swear, my God is just so clear that a system driven by fear can never give us nothing but more of the same things. Oh, when it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all. It's just a GMO dream, where things are never really what they seem. Please, cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty, cause this gritty city got me screaming. It's murder, it got me screaming, got me. This gritty city got me on song.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, pestilence and disease, we see it, what we feed on dreams of illusionary resistance. But I'm here to tell you, it ain't even like that. Check it. Now the racist conditions by a government that be. See, this shit is a mockery, it's unacceptable to me. So we cast a spell on them for the things that they have done, that transcend infinity with blessings from the widow's sons. You know, Africa never really did shit to you. She blessed you, nurtured you, she made you anew. She gave you civility and then showed you what to do. So for my ancestors' tombs, I won't cast a fucking spell on you. Your racist governments will cease to exist, and then nature itself gon' put an end to your shit. See, I won't lift a finger, I won't move an inch. Just like King Solomon didn't move when he entombed Time of Biff. When the bones of black slaves re-rise from their graves to rebel and rage because of the shit that you made. From the dawn of your history and even today, we fought to eradicate your evil ass hate. The sun bleeds blood when it rises here in the West. Oh, we gon' see that if your ass can pass this test. There's no restitutions, or that you made a mistake. You can save that shit, David, cause your sorries came too late. The space shuttles you launch will do no damn good. You'll answer to the babies here in the slums, here in the hoods. Your evil empire will crumble into the sea. All this shit was approved by divine decree. It comes from my ancestors, so you can't blame it on me. And this shit was approved by divine decree. From Puerto Rico to Galilee, this spell was approved by divine decree. Fidel and Malcolm said history will absolve me. This shit was approved by divine decree. From the northern lights to the Arctic Sea, this shit was approved by divine decree. You can ask Asada Mumia, you'll see. It's all approved by divine decree. We'll free the land, oh it will be free. Cause this shit was approved by divine decree. It no longer matters what you think you can do to me. This shit was approved by divine decree. It was all approved by divine decree. This shit was approved by divine decree.
Happening, good people. We are live and direct. 55-year anniversary of Panther 21. Shout out to my people, Sonny Patterson with the intro, with both intros, and also Welfare Poets. You just heard Divine Decree. I keep trying to hit y'all with some of these culture workers and artists that need to be heard. You know what I'm saying? These are artists that have been burning it down for years. So shout out to my man Raising the Welfare Poets. You'll get a whole lot more things like that on RSTV. I want to say that again, you know, today being the 55-year anniversary of the Panther 21 case, we wanted to bring in, you know, my OG brother. I've been blessed and stressed at the same time to work with. You know what I'm saying? Definitely wanted to, you know, commemorate this day because it's an important day. 55 years ago today, the NYPD's Bureau of Special Services bossy swooped down on 21 members of the New York chapter of the Black Panther Party in predawn raids across the city. This was the public beginning of the infamous New York Panther 21 conspiracy trial. Only 13 members of the New York Panthers actually stood trial. Among them were Sundiata Acoli, Afeni Shakur, and our guest, Dhoruba Bin Wahad. The Panther 21 conspiracy case at the time will become the longest and most expensive conspiracy trial in the history of the Manhattan District Attorney's Office under the tutelage of the celebrated DA Frank S. Hogan. It would ultimately mark his most humiliating defeat of his career. The Panther 21 case, as it would become known as, became a cause célèbre of America's anti-Vietnam War and anti-racist New Left, and would highlight the public criminalization of Black radical movements by the then covert FBI counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO. Number of things took place stemming from that. The indictments of Bobby Seale, who's the chairman of the Black Panther Party in New Haven, Connecticut, for the FBI contrived murder of Alex Rackley. The whole situation with the Chicago 7, you know, the assassinations of Jonathan Jackson and, you know, George Jackson and so on and so forth. A lot of stuff stemmed from, you know, this whole COINTELPRO situation, which many of us begin to see the light of, you know, with this whole Panther 21 case, you know, and of course the Chairman Fred assassination, so on and so forth. Without further ado, I want to bring on my brother, comrade, OG, elder, all that good stuff to the joint today to commemorate this piece with me, Dhoruba Bin Wahad. Dhoruba, what's happening, my man?
I'm good, brother. Salam alaikum, Ramadan Kareem to all of the brothers and sisters in the Muslim community who tuned in and were watching on this historic Ramadan. And greetings to all of the revolutionary brothers and sisters who are tuned in and listening to the program. I'm honored to be here today, and I'm glad you reached out, our brother Kalonji, so we could talk a little bit about what the significance of the 55th anniversary of the Panther 21 arrest and prosecution has engendered for us.
Start off by giving you salams as well, Alaikum Salam and Ramadan Kareem for, you know, I'm glad to see you here today, like you said, on this historic piece. A lot of folks aren't familiar with the Panther 21 case. In fact, a lot of people aren't familiar with the Black Panther Party, primarily on the East Coast and in other spaces. For folks who are unaware, give us some background on how this whole Panther 21 case came about, because it had a number of different
You're breaking up, Kalonji. That's
okay.
probably not you. That's, the internet on the west coast of Africa has been interrupted by underwater damage to the communications line in the Red Sea. So
Okay.
you're breaking up a little bit.
Okay. Well, I'm asking you about if you could break down the Panther 21 case. What exactly was the Panther 21 case, if you can hear me on that?
Well, the Panther 21 case was the result of a secret indictment that was brought about by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office of Frank S. Sullivan in 1969. It was a secret indictment that compiled a series of absurd um, acts, conspiratorial acts like the bombing of the botanical gardens, the um, um, attempt to attack Abercrombie and Finch, a department store, um, and a host of other absurd conspiracy acts that were charged by the then Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Now, key to this indictment, and which was very enlightening, was the role that undercover police agents played in bringing about this concoction called the Panther 21 conspiracy indictment. One of the major players, one of the major undercover agents was Gene Roberts, who was also an undercover bossy agent in the security entourage of Malcolm X. In fact, he was at Malcolm X's assassination and was seen giving him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on the Audubon stage floor after he had been brutally assassinated and murdered um, uh, that day in the Audubon ballroom. Another agent was also part and parcel of of, of the indictment or the charges brought against the so-called attempt to destroy the Statue of Liberty. It was a case that was brought earlier before the Panther 21 case, uh, and by this particular undercover agent. So the Panther 21 indictment was a combination of covert um, infiltration and concoction of a radical so-called terroristic activities that the Black Panther Party was supposed to have been engaged in. And it was brought, of course, to discredit and to demonize and criminalize the Black Panther Party overall in the country. The Black Panther Party was at the height of its notoriety in 1969. It was founded in October of 1966, and by 1969, this time in 1969, the Black Panther Party was well known around the country as being the foremost advocate of armed self-defense in the Black community against racist police terror. So it was very important to discredit the Black Panther Party as a genuine organization that reflected the need of African people or the prerequisite of African people to defend themselves against racist police brutality and right-wing racist um, murder. And so the Panther 21 case was seen as an opportunity by law enforcement to present the party and its members as criminals, as bandits, as crazed terrorists to the public, and thereby vilify the cause of the Black Panther Party and the organization. So that was the purpose of the indictment. And when 2 years later, in 1971, in May of 1971, when the Black Panther Party um, um, members who stood trial were acquitted on all counts by a multiracial jury. It was a significant defeat for law enforcement, especially for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. And they vowed never again to bring conspiracy indictments against political radicals. From that point on, all the indictments and all the charges against Black radicals were criminal charges based on uh, um, so-called assassinations and murders of law enforcement. And of course, we know what followed that conspiracy indictment, the trumped-up charges against Mumia Abu Jamal for killing a police officer, the trumped-up charges against Imam Jamil Al-Amin, formerly Rat Brown, for the similar thing, for killing a police officer. No more conspiracy indictments were brought against black radicals. From then on, from that point on, it was all criminal charges based on so-called overt crimes and assaults on law enforcement. So the Panther 21 trial was the tip of an iceberg at that time, uh, that indicated the national scope of how law enforcement combined and colluded to destroy black radical thinking, black radical organizations, and ultimately undermine the ability of black people to organize in their own behalf and form their own political party, and also undermine the right or the right of African people to defend themselves against racist attack. So the Panther 21 trial was signified the beginning of that revelation to the majority of black people. And it became a very popular cause celeb. Leonard Bernstein, who was the the who was at the Philharmonic Orchestra in, in New York, gave a reception to raise money for the Black Panthers who were in prison, and he was demonized and ultimately hounded to his grave by the establishment media and press as a dupe, as a dupe of radical anti-Zionist black militants. So, I mean, it's much more involved than that, but briefly, that was the significance of the Panther 21 case in April of 1969.
So I want to point out too, because and I appreciate that you mentioned that there was a case prior to the Panther 21 case, and that case that you spoke on, I want the audience to know, a few days before the assassination of Malcolm X, El Hajj Malik Shabazz, there was a number of brothers and sisters who were swept up by the New York police and accused of similar crimes, one of them being Professor Walter Bowe. Professor Walter Bowe is actually the father of one of our comrades on the West Coast, Che Bowe. And he's also the uncle of boxer Riddick Bowe. But he was one of Malcolm's security detail. So they targeted folks who can give them, they can get them out the way, that they can get out the way so that they can take Malcolm out. And again, many of those folks was charged with some of the things you talked about, like attempting conspiracy to blow up the botanical garden, the subways, and all kinds of other things that was, nonsensical, Statue of Liberty, so on and so forth. So I wanted to point that out. And I also want to point out that we're talking about 1969. We're talking about 6 months before the assassination of Chairman Fred out in Chicago.
He was assassinated. He was assassinated on December 4th, I believe, in 1969.
Yeah. So, who are some of because it's way more intricate, as you said, but who are some of the other folks who were indicted? Because we're talking about 21, and as we mentioned, 13 of them actually stood trial. But who are some of the other folks that were involved in that Panther 21 case that they
Well, of course, the name lead defendant in the Panther 21 case was Lumumba Shakur, who was the brother of Zaid Shakur, who later would be killed in the New Jersey Turnpike with Assata Shakur. Lumumba Shakur was a field lieutenant in the Bronx, in the Harlem branch of the Black Panther Party. Also indicted on that case was Sekou Odinga, who recently passed away in New York. Sekou Odinga was, however, escaped the original raid on the morning of April 2nd, he escaped. He slid out of down the drain pipe 4 stories up. He slid down the drain pipe into an alley in New York, in Brooklyn, and escaped. And the next time we heard from Sekou Odinga, he was in Algeria, in the international section of the Black Panther Party. So Sekou Odinga escaped um, um, from this web that was thrown out to capture all of us on April 2nd. Also in the indictment of stood trial was Afeni Shakur. Everybody knows Afeni Shakur. She's the mother of Tupac Shakur. And Afeni was also indicted. Another sister that was indicted that many people don't know about is Joan Bird, who also was charged in the indictment with aiding and abetting Sekou Odinga in a purported ambush of New York City policemen in the Bronx, outside of the Bronx police station, um, uh, in earlier in 1969. Uh, Another person that was indicted but didn't stand trial because he was a youth at that time was Jamal Josephs. Jamal Josephs was held on Rikers Island along with another comrade, uh, and they were both adolescents at the time, so they were brought to trial. We know Jamal Josephs today as a professor of cinematography at Columbia University. He is a renowned cinematographer. He's been nominated for Oscar awards for his work in cinematography. Um, Another a member who was indicted in that and swept up that morning was Michael Setaweo Tabor, who himself too, or later on during the trial, he disappeared and fled to Algeria, where he died in exile a few years ago. Um, there were other members of the Black Panther Party who were also swept up in that indictment. And and I just want to say that I just mentioned some of the more well-known members of, of the Panther 21. Um, but the record is there for anyone who wants to go and look at it. The record of the Panther 21 trial is a public record. It's good. It's good to research for those who are trying to delve into the radical history and the repression of the Black movement. And so this is why I feel very lucky and fortunate to still be around to, to talk about this event. Most of my comrades who were indicted or um, who lived through that period are no longer with us. Lee Barry, who was an indicted co-conspirator in the 21 trial, he just passed away 2 weeks ago. We know that Sundiata Acoli, who was also a member of the Panther 21 and stood trial, just was released, I believe, 4 years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago, from almost 50 years in prison as a political prisoner. So the Panther 21 indictment was aimed at destroying what the law enforcement saw as one of the most pivotal chapters of in the Black Panther Party organization, because it was in Harlem. It was in New York City, which was the cultural and political capital of, of, of the African diaspora in the United States. The Harlem Renaissance, many of the artists that we know and writers that we know from the so-called Black Renaissance of the 20s and 30s and 40s came from Harlem, were in Harlem. Malcolm X taught, Haj Malik Shabazz taught every weekend on 125th Street and 7th Avenue. And he gave classes right on the streets. um, and, Malcolm X, and other black nationalists like Kalonji Changa, who started the first black models, fashion models, who wore
I understand.
afros and naturally, yeah. And so Harlem was like the cultural, nationalist, and political hub of Black America, of Africans in the diaspora. So it was very important in law enforcement size to destroy the credibility of the Black Panther Party in New York and specifically in Harlem.
I want to talk about too, because as you mentioned uh forgot homeboy's name from the Philharmonic orchestra.
Yeah,
What's his
Leonard
name?
Bernstein.
Leonard
Leonard
Bernstein.
Bernstein.
Right. I mean, from different interviews, I remember talking to um, Comrade Sylvia Berardini out in Italy, and one of the things she talked about was that she moved to New York to be a supporter of the Panther 21 case. So before she even got down with any real action, that's why she came to New York. That's why a number of different people I spoke to, they said they got involved because the Panther 21 case was such an egregious case against a liberation movement that they had to do something. They had to just, I mean, literally, and that speaks volumes, because nowadays you don't have too many folks who are willing to go to move to a whole nother city, a whole nother state to get active. I'm not talking about to show up at a protest. I'm not talking about to show up at a march or a rally because they got, um, you know, whatever, the thousand fighters for whatever, or this is a march for this day of action. We talking about to really get involved in the organizing efforts and strategies. Um, this case, by I believe it was what, 71 that you all were cleared.
Yes, we were all acquitted in May of '71. Yeah, in early
Right.
May of 1971, at the just as the Black Panther Party had undergone a serious move to the right and split, and it was after the acquittal of the Panther 21 that immediately after the acquittal of the Panther 21 that the Black Liberation Army emerged on the scene um, on May 19th, the anniversary of Malcolm X's birthday, born day, in
Right.
1971. So yes, it was 2 years in the making of, 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 of the Panther 21 iconistic role in the Black movement. And it was a
And
tumultuous 2 years. During that period, of course, as you mentioned, uh, we had the, the Marin County shootout in which Jonathan Jackson was killed. We also had the indictment of Angela Davis for conspiracy in that event. Um, we also had the murder of Fred Hampton, as you mentioned, during that same period. We had the Chicago conspiracy case that grew out of the Chicago riots at the Democratic Convention in 1969. And so this was a tumultuous period for radical movements. We also had the Tet Offensive that occurred in Vietnam that reassured the establishment and U.S. imperialism that they could not defeat the Vietnamese people. Um, I mean, this was a historical time. Uh, it was during this period, too, that LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, launched his so-called war on poverty and resigned and refused to run for re-election. And that war on poverty, of course, led to the rise of black capitalism, which in turn infected and spawned the reactionary black boule movement of, of anti-police brutality with so-called black on black crime, the popularization of the term black on black crime to detract from black people's focus on the police, the militarization of the police. And I like to point out too, this was a very pivotal time in mainstream political politics, because it was during this period that the war on crime, the war on drugs, began to become part and parcel of law enforcement's lexicon and their development as a militarized domestic police force. So the Panther 21 case spanned this period of time in radical black history. And like I said, Malcolm said that history is the best subject to reward all research. So for your listeners and for those who are unfamiliar with this period of time, it would, they could start with the Panther 21 case and look at the events that occurred across America between 1969, April 1969, and May in 1971.
So along with this, so you all are acquitted. I believe it's like a week later that they came for you again.
Yes. Well, you see, this is a part of the story that hasn't been told, and hopefully I'll be able to tell it in my book before I transition. Um, it was during the Panther 21 trial that the counterintelligence um, uh, apparatus of the FBI placed myself and others on trial in what they call the agitator index. And the agitators index was an index that the FBI kept of what they considered key black radicals in the United States that they hoped they could target for neutralization. I was also placed in the Black Nationalist Photographic Album of the FBI, which was distributed to law enforcement around the country to identify any of us who traveled out of our home states to speak or to appear in at events in other states. And this targeting, I became a COINTELPRO target, and as a result of that, the FBI began um, to create the type of atmosphere and division in the Black Panther Party that could neutralize us. And by neutralize, I meant either imprison or kill us while we were on trial, because like I said, we have become quite popular as 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 defendants. We were traveling around the country speaking. Those of us who got out on bail, Afeni Shakur, myself, Michael Sodaweo Tabor, Jamal Josephs, and Ashaba On, who was also a defendant who was not put on trial. We became very popular, and so the government targeted us for neutralization. And part of that targeting was assassination, to create rivalry between the East Coast of the Black Panther Party and the West Coast of the Black Panther Party, that they called the Cleaver faction, was called after Eldridge Cleaver, who was in exile. Uh, he was labeled as the titular head of the Cleaver faction, the more radical faction of the Black Panther Party, who still believed in armed self-defense and armed struggle, as opposed to the West Coast um, um, uh, Black Panther Party in its origins in Oakland, California, who had at that time began to move to the right as the repression of the counterintelligence program began to take its toll on its leadership, on Huey P. Newton, on Bobby Seale, on many of the original founders of the Black Panther Party. They began to move to the right and began to eschew or begin to back away from armed self-defense. And so the FBI focused on the East Coast Black Panther Party, which maintained its militancy, its military opposition to white supremacy and the police. And so while I was on trial, they influenced, they sent letters and snitches to talk to Huey P. Newton and influence him and to get him to believe that his life was in danger if he traveled to the East Coast um, and on a speaking tour that was to take place in 1971, in early 1971, and I believe it was March or March or April of 1971. And so, in response to this COINTELPRO uh, operation to have us eliminated and neutralized, we were faced with possible assassination if we continued on in public on trial on a regular basis. Uh, People were disposed, were sent to members of the party were dispatched to eliminate us while we were in the public arena and on trial. And that forced us to go underground. That forced us to move underground. And
So wait, for clarity, because it's important what you just said. You said that members of the party were dispatched to eliminate you, right? You all being members of the party, so we forced underground. So part of that was that when Huey had put you all on the cover of the paper saying that you were enemies to the people or something like that. Can you talk about that and kind of that connection?
well, the split in the Black Panther Party was a long time coming. The party was infiltrated with undercover agents across the country in various cities. As you well know, Fred Hampton was betrayed by an undercover agent. Geronimo Pratt also, who was a leading member of the Black Panther Party in the West Coast in Los Angeles, was also betrayed by an undercover agent in Texas, and he was captured and he was framed for the murder of two people and sentenced to life imprisonment. And so at that time, when Geronimo had went underground, had moved to through Texas to begin to organize the underground of the Black Panther Party. Um, he was portrayed um, by the West Coast leaders, specifically David Hilliard and his crew in the national headquarters, as an agent, as an undercover agent, as a renegade, and so he was expelled from the party. His expulsion was put on the cover of the Black Panther Party newspaper, and this had a very devastating effect on a lot of members of the Black Panther Party, especially the Panther 21, who were in prison at the time, who remained in prison while we were out on bail. And so they were inspired by what they thought was the betrayal of the cause and their betrayal as the Panther 21. Um, they responded with a letter, an open letter, denouncing the treatment of Geronimo, denouncing the leadership of the Black Panther Party, and this letter was was distributed and placed in the radical newspapers at the time by the FBI. Although the letter wasn't authorized, and we did everything in our power, Setaway, myself, Afeni, we did everything in our power to try to persuade the brothers in prison not to print such or not to distribute such an inflammatory document at this particular time, given the vulnerability of the Black Panther Party in terms of repression around the country. The FBI got a hold of the draft of it and they released it publicly. And this infuriated Huey P. Newton, who then expelled the Panther 21 publicly and placed those of us who were out on bail on probation. And it was our alienation from the leadership of the Black Panther Party on the West Coast that led to threats against our lives and the plot to kill us by various members of the West Coast of Black Panther Party who were on the East Coast, actually. And these assassination attempts, of course, failed. We went underground, so we were no longer visible for that type of assassination. And as a consequence of that conflict, comrades from the West Coast who were in New York were one of them, Samuel Napier, who was the chief distribution officer of the Black Panther newspaper. He was killed, and in this conflict in New York. And myself, Jamal Josephs, and another member of the BLA, Irving Mason, we were all indicted for his killing after I was captured in I believe June 5th of 1971. When I was captured on June 5th. And so the FBI thought that upon my capture, and again, I'm going to go into this in my writings, when we went underground, we began to wage an all-out war against the heroin dealers and the drug dealers and those criminal elements in the Black community that were destroying our community. And this was a hands-on conflict. This was not, ideological conflict. This was a direct action conflict. And we waged this struggle against drug dealers in New York. And I was captured during one such operation on June 5th, 1971. And when I was captured, the police realized, they said, well, here we go. We have former field secretary of the Black Panther Party from Harlem, who escaped prosecution in New York, who they had a warrant out for my arrest, even though I was acquitted in absentia when the Panther 21 was acquitted. And they focused on me, and ultimately I went through 3 trials, 2 hung juries, and a conviction, and the one that ended in the conviction for the attempted, for the shooting of Pierre Foster and Curry and Benetti, 2 police officers who were shot on the anniversary of Malcolm X's birthday, May 19th, I believe. And yeah, so they convicted me, and I was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. And I did 19 of those 25 years before I was freed behind the ceaseless and selfless sacrifice of radical attorneys Elizabeth Fink, Robert J. Boyle, Bill Kunstler, and others who fought for my case, and who themselves came to their radical politics as a consequence of the Panther 21 trial. Elizabeth Fink, in law school, attended the Panther 21 trial, just like Sylvia Berardini. And she took on my case. She also was the representative of the Attica case, the Attica Rebellion defendants. And so it all came full circle. Excuse me one second. Excuse me one second. This is Conrad.
We're checking out. It's Dhoruba Bin Wahad. He broadcasting from Ghana. Him and his crew. You good over there?
Yeah, I'm good. That was Conrad. That was Brother Victor Houston, one of the original members of the Black Panther Party.
Okay.
In Texas, and he keeps calling me, and
hey, Crocodile, text him and tell him Dhoruba's live, man. I see what Brother Crocodile.
Yeah, he can't. He doesn't.
Dhoruba,
excuse
there
me.
you go. Say something. You talking to somebody else?
Yeah, I'm on a podcast, brother. I'll talk to you later. I'm sorry, man. That's
I already know. So shout out to him.
And as a Panther, you see how persistent he is, right? You see how
Anyway,
persistent he is. I'm sorry for that
no, it's all
interruption.
good. Yeah. So
So where was I?
you was talking about the case being wrapped up as far as the Liz and Bob Boyle and everyone fighting to continue to get you out actually after the 19 years.
Yes, yeah, they fought for me pro bono, no money, anything, and they stuck with the case, and ultimately um, I was um, I was freed in 1990. I believe it was March of 1990. I
Hmm.
was um, I was released from prison.
And you were released, for folks that don't know, because there's a number of people that are watching. Of course, most people on Black Power Media, they've seen you. You like an honorary co-host right now. You know what I'm saying, on various shows here on Black Power Media. But for folks that aren't familiar, how did you end up getting out? Because you said they were relentless in in continuing to fight to get you released, as far as Bob and Liz and Bill Kunstler and folks like that. What ultimately led to that? Because a lot of folks, because we're talking about, when you talk about the Panther 21 case, when you talk about the assassination of Chairman Fred, when you talk about a number of these different cases, it involves counterinsurgency. Counterinsurgency involved COINTELPRO. So talk about how you ended up being released and what led to that, basically, because it looked like you was out for the count.
Yeah, they thought I was down and out, and but what happened is a bunch of white radicals broke into the FBI office in, I believe, Reading, Pennsylvania, and they
Media,
uncovered
Pennsylvania.
Media, Pennsylvania. I'm sorry, and they uncovered documents that from the FBI office that read COINTELPRO, counterintelligence program, and they released these documents to the press. And these documents showed that the FBI was engaged in a covert war against black radicals and black militants from Malcolm X. Before Malcolm X, Martin Luther King was a target of COINTELPRO. Many of the so-called civil rights icons of the civil rights movement in the South were targets of COINTELPRO. And it also showed and revealed that the Black Panther Party was a particular target of the counterintelligence program. In fact, the documents, the FBI documents indicated that by 1970, by the beginning of 1970, almost 80% of all of the counterintelligence program operations that were initiated in the black community were aimed at the Black Panther Party. And so I was in prison, convicted of this shooting on May 19th of two police officers,
Eddie.
Curry and Benetti, and they were wounded. They were grievously wounded in this shooting. And in these documents were police interviews and files are related to this case, and they showed that some of the key evidence that they used in my trial and in my conviction was in fact fabricated. It was in fact the result of machinations of the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, who manipulated testimony, who hid ballistics reports that contradicted what they presented in trial. The key witness against me in my trial was also contradicted in FBI documents. The FBI was present at during most of the investigation in the shootings of these police officers, so they kept their own separate records other than the records kept by the NYPD. And their records indicated that much of the testimony in my case was fabricated, it was manipulated, and material evidence was fabricated. and manipulated. And so it was Elizabeth Fink and Robert Boyle who took these. When I heard about these files, I went to my attorney then, who was my attorney in the 20, who was attorney in the 21 case, Robert Bloom. Um, uh, who had continued to represent me despite everyone who would label me as a criminal and as a thug and all of these things because of the counterintelligence program and the way we were arrested. He went to the Center for Constitutional Rights with, with some of these files and asked them, could they help file a civil action against the FBI and against the government for framing me, for manufacturing evidence. And the Center for Constitutional Rights at first was kind of reluctant to take this, but they took on the case, and I filed a civil suit against the FBI. And after 3 or 4 years of fighting this civil suit, um, um, I got there was a case, unrelated case, um, that came up in the New York Court of Appeals that said that evidence that was withheld during a trial that could have changed the jury's opinion or verdict, if it was withheld, there had to be a hearing to determine whether the withholding of that evidence would have changed the outcome of the trial. And it was on that we took our evidence that we had gleaned from 300,000 pages of FBI files. 300,000 pages of FBI COINTELPRO files that we got from our suit. And the judge in that suit ruled that the evidence that was withheld in my previous trials may have had influence on the jury, and that a new trials were to be ordered in 1990, in February, in March of 1990. And of course, he ordered my release without bail immediately, pending the state's setting the date for a new trial. And after a year and a half on appeal, out on appeal, the state decided that they could no longer bring the case, and they dropped the charges. So I was relatively free by 1993, at which time I had already began to transition and move to Africa, where you see me now, since 1993.
No doubt. For folks who are who want to learn, excuse me, more about that, there's a documentary out called "Passing It On" that actually shows the courtroom scene, Dhoruba touring Harlem, so on and so forth, which started actually before you even thought about getting out. They had started that documentary. Can you touch on that a little bit, real quick?
Well, yes, "Passing It On" was a documentary. Well, before "Passing It On," there was another documentary called "Framing the Panthers" in black and white, and this was by two young white cinematographers, and from I believe New Zealand or somewhere like that, and they heard about the Panther 21 case, and they wanted to do a brief documentary, and they did. And it was because of Tanakil Jones, who took on my case. She was working with Joan Gibbs. May Allah be pleased with her. Joan Gibbs, the attorney Joan Gibbs, the people's attorney, valiant, a brave attorney who fought many cases, who passed away just a few weeks ago. She transitioned just a few weeks ago.
Right,
well, Tanakil Jones, who was an activist in the Columbia student rebellions and the anti-apartheid movement, was working with her and came with her to visit me in prison, and they took an interest in my case, and Tanakil Jones began to fight wholeheartedly and with all of her passion and eloquence to get me out of prison. And it was because of her that passing it on and framing the Panthers in black and white came into reality, because she was the one that directed the producers and the writers in that case. She helped compile all of the information in those documentaries, and she brought it to fruition. So shout out to my comrade and sister and love of my life, Tanaka Jones. If it wasn't for her, you wouldn't even have the documentary Passing It On. So it was by the grace of Allah or the ancestors that I was able to come in contact with people like Tanaka Jones, like Elizabeth Fink, like Robert Boyle, individuals who believed in our humanity, who believed in our right to struggle and resist tyranny, and who fought on the levels that they could in the courtroom, in the streets, in the various halls of justice and legislation that resulted in my being freed from prison. So I just want to give my gratitude to many of them who have passed away, whether it was Joan Gibbs, William Kunstler, and, um, and those who were living, Robert Boyle and Robert Bloom. And Robert Bloom also worked on Geronimo's case. And he did the initial compilation of information and evidence in Geronimo's case. People don't know that some of the documents from my COINTELPRO files served to help Geronimo get out of prison. And it was the same thing with Herman Ferguson, who was in exile. Documents out of my COINTELPRO suit showed that Herman Ferguson was was framed by the U.S. government and driven into exile. And so, and by the way, just as a vignette, as a footnote, I got the initial understanding or the initial awareness of myself as a COINTELPRO target, but I was an actual target with a designated FBI number. I got that from the head Fred Hampton's civil suit that was brought in Chicago in the wake of his murder. Because when we brought my first initial civil suit in New York in the Southern District, the district attorney's office, the FBI said they had no files on me other than my criminal record, that they didn't have no such thing as a COINTELPRO document in my name. And the lawyers who were fighting for Fred Hampton's Fred Hampton's civil suit came across came across documents of the counterintelligence program that revealed the existence of that informer who informed on him. He was an FBI agent who helped set up Fred Hampton. And in those documents, there I was, my COINTELPRO file with my name on it. And they sent these documents to Elizabeth Fink and Robert Boyle in New York, and they presented it to the first black female judge that was on the Southern District Court, that was appointed, I believe, she was appointed under Lyndon Baines Johnson, Mary Johnson Lowe, a brilliant black attorney and a sister of impeccable integrity. And when she saw these documents with my name on it, and when she saw that the FBI and the government had lied to her all of these months saying that they had no such documents, she ordered everything that they had on the Black Panther Party and on the New York chapter of the Black Panther Party to be turned over. And I spent almost 3 years in federal custody going over these documents. And that's how I discovered the documents that ultimately showed that I was framed, that exculpatory evidence was withheld, and that's how I got out of prison.
We need more Mary Johnson Lowe's than we have some of these other Negroes out here. I want to, and I'm not going to hold you up too much longer, but May 2nd, 1973, the Newark, New Jersey, the New Jersey Turnpike incident, which consisted of Sundiata Acoli, who, as you mentioned earlier, who has been on this program. He's a political prisoner that served close to 50 years himself. I think he's 87 right now, 87, 88. There was Malik Shakur, who was murdered on that turnpike, assassinated and of course Afeni Shakur, who was shot and arrested and now in exile right now. I want to ask you because we've talked many times in the past, and one of the things we talked about was chest rob in regards to Asada, or formerly known as Joanne Chesimard. I wanted to ask because I'm curious because you had Sundiata Acoli in the car, who was a member of the Panther 21 case as well. And shout out to Ali Bey Hassan, we can't forget him as well. But we had Sundiata was a part of the Panther 21 case, and then Zaid was also the brother of Lumumba, who was a part of the 21 case. Do you think there was any connection to that? Because again, and I would like you, for folks who haven't heard about chest rob, if you don't mind, I would like you to brush on that as well, because when we talk about COINTELPRO, a lot of folks just link everything, just dump everything in the same pot and say, this is what it is, stir it all up. We know it's a government assault, so on and so forth. We know it's counterinsurgency, but there's different levels. So if you can talk about that connection and chest rob, that'd be a good thing.
Well, briefly, I'll try to be brief, but there's a whole lot of history in it. When COINTELPRO was exposed as a secret government program, it had already been discarded by the FBI, who realized that by 1971, and that black militancy had began to move to a much more radical and militant phase, and so they began to implement a program called New Kill. And New Kill meant the new killing of police officers, and this came about with the indictment, my indictment, for the May 19th shooting of Curry and Benetti, and the subsequent of killing of Piagentini and Jones 2 days later in 1971. At that time in 1971, the president then, Richard M. Nixon, convened a meeting in the White House with his chief of staff, Haldeman, with FBI Director J. Dhoruba, and they said that that black militancy has moved to a whole new level of urban guerrilla resistance, of urban armed resistance to the state, and that they needed a new level of surveillance and intelligence and repression and instruments of repression in order to combat this. So what they did was they launched a program called New Kill, New Killing of Police Officers, in 1971. And this program first began by taking every black militant that was in the FBI agitator index, that was also known as a black radical, and lumping them all together as potential suspects in the formation of a black guerrilla underground in America. And so any shootings of police officers in any jurisdiction automatically fell under this program called New Kill. And so policemen who were held accountable for police brutality and murder in various municipalities, those suspects who were arrested or who were pursued in pursuit of those cases, they were lumped into the file New Kill. The FBI conducted ballistics analysis of all the weapons that were seized in every shooting of police officers across the country. And so Operation New Kill was the handoff to the government's counterinsurgency program against against armed black radicals. It was aimed at the Black Liberation Army's emergence in 1971 specifically. And out of that Operation New Kill came the so-called chest rob investigations. Chest rob was short for Joanne Chesimard robberies, because they believed that Afeni Shakur, who had became a fugitive, who had been elevated into this status of so-called
Mother hen.
mother hen of the Black Liberation Army. They had her any place where there was a sister with an afro that was remotely involved in anything political. It was Asada, and so the BLA at that time. Um, its major means of raising funds was, of course, expropriations from banks and also um, um, expropriations from drug dealers um, and, um, and dealing with criminal organized crime in the black community and, um, and taking taxes from them and holding them to account. And Asada became very prominent in this, and in as far as law enforcement was concerned. So they were out to get her and her comrades. And so when when on that fateful day when Sister Asada was traveling on the New Jersey Turnpike with Zaid Malik Shakur and Sundiata Acoli, um, uh, they were accosted by the police who ran their plates and who saw three black folks in a vehicle and called for backup and all of this stuff. And so when they approached the car, with the intentions of shooting the occupants or ambushing the occupants. And so a violent confrontation ensued and a police officer was killed. Joanne was wounded. Zaid Malik Shakur was killed on the scene, and Sundiata Acoli managed to flee the scene, but he was captured several hours or days later and incarcerated. And everybody went on trial for the murder of this police officer um, um, who had accosted them on the New Jersey Turnpike. And of course, if we look into the history of this, we'll see that Asada Shakur was convicted. She was never convicted of any of the armed robberies, but she was convicted of this shooting of a police officer on the New Jersey Turnpike and sentenced to life imprisonment. And she was liberated by units of the Black Liberation Army and 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 taken and placed underground and ultimately ended up in Cuba, where she now lives now in asylum. Um, so it was during this period that also that many of my comrades were also captured and incarcerated. And while we were incarcerated, the government realized that they thought that we were a threat even in prison. Imam Jamil was captured and incarcerated at that time too, um, for so-called a stick-up of the after-hour club, much the same way I was, and so they came up with this other program that was designed to train law enforcement and prison officials on how to handle political prisoners, how to neutralize them, and how to turn them while in prison and flip them and neutralize them in prison. And this became known as Price Act, Prison Activist Program. And it was aimed at political prisoners who came out of the movement. And much of that evidence can be seen in Orasani Burton's book, Tip of the Spear, which documents a Price Act and how the U.S. government carried out a program to neutralize and isolate black political prisoners and prisoners of war in prison. So it was after. So in summation, after the revelations of COINTELPRO, and as the radical movement became um, um, divided, when some elements of the Black Panther Party and the left moved towards a reform and electoral politics, while others maintained that we had the right to self-defense, we had the right to exact a consequence physically and militarily on the system that killed and murdered us. Um, uh, the government evolved and created another program to address that, and that was the program that we were just talking about, nuclear, and from that came Chesserab, which was aimed at running down and tracking down members of the Black Liberation Army who were expropriating funds from various financial institutions and waging a war against drug dealers in the major urban areas of the Northeast. And after that repression came Operation Price Act, which was designed to deal with those who were captive or captured during these struggles on the streets and were political prisoners, and how to neutralize them so that they could not influence others in prison. So that's basically the lineage of COINTELPRO, how it evolved from 1971 to the early 80s.
Okay. I appreciate that for sure. While I'm here with you, I'm just getting a call, just getting a text from our comrade. As I told you earlier, some folks may not know, so we have clearance. I wasn't going to say anything just yet. Our comrade, OG Masai Hosi, made this transition. So we're gonna his services tomorrow. Of course, he's a Muslim. Will be in the West End at the West End Community Masjid. We are looking to raise some resources because we're not sure if his insurance will cover everything that he needs and the family needs. So I'm gonna put this across. This is for folks who are able to contribute to Comrade Masai Hosi. Dhoruba, if you could talk about Masai a little bit, because I know that he's a BLA POW as well. He's one of the comrades who folks, a humble brother who many folks didn't even know anything about. So I want to, if you don't mind, talking about Masai for a minute, who is down here in Atlanta. Masai is also a citizen of the Republic of New Africa. He's a part of IJAM, which is the Imam Jamil Action Network. He was co-minister of information for the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa, founding and current member of Critical Resistance. And, he's always fighting on behalf of us. So if you don't mind, Dhoruba, talk a little bit about our comrade Masai, and for folks who are in the chat who can give, the Cash App is on the screen right now. But go ahead, Dhoruba.
Well, let me allow me, please, with him. From Malawi come to Malawi we return. Masai was a soldier in the BLA. And like many soldiers in the BLA, many of us don't know them and know them by name or their struggles. Masai was a soldier just like brother Tariq in New York, Asante Alston. There's other, the black, but people don't really understand is that many of the brothers that emerged after the split in the Black Panther Party that were underground were recruited themselves from prison and from other movements and from other struggles. And Masai, as you can see, as you mentioned by his track record, has always been a consistent stalwart in the struggle against white supremacy and the murder and killing of African people in the United States. He's always been on the front lines of that struggle. And as we grew older, and as we, some of us went to prison, some went to prison shorter than others, but those brothers and sisters who went to prison and who came out mostly continued to struggle in different ways, whether they joined organizations like Critical Resistance or other organizations, they continued to struggle. And I think that's the foremost, that should be the foremost lesson, and that we should take from comrades like Masai, that the struggle continues, and that we don't, those of us of my generation at least, we don't quit, we don't give up. I mean, it's sad to see how much of our struggles have went unnoticed and unappreciated, and as well as um, a generation that has arisen that has no clue about resistance and sacrifice. You know, brothers like Masai, brother like Ashanti Austin, brothers like Mumia Abu Jamal, who's still in prison, is one of the most um, uh, one of the most strident voices for human rights and justice, even while in prison, even while racked with severe illness, still manages to place his voice and his analysis before all of us, for all of us to see and for all of us to appreciate. I count myself fortunate and and indeed blessed to have had these brothers and comrades in my life and in the struggle. And I may be going down slow now, but black don't crack, and I'm still I'm still I'm still trying to contribute on the best way that I can. But I think that Masai is a classic example of those who fought on the front lines, who they didn't fight for notoriety, for glory, to have their names kicked about and everything. Messiah remained humble until the day he passed.
That's right. That's right.
I believe I saw that brother at Sekou Odinga's janazah and funeral just a couple of months ago. And he approached me with that typical quiet and humble demeanor. And you always brings a smile to your face when you see comrades like that. You say, man, you still here, man. And, you know, and yeah.
I was cracking jokes on him last time I saw him. We was at man, I ain't seen him since Sekou's tribute. And we was talking afterwards, took some pictures and everything. And I was like, man, I gotta get you on the show and whatnot. He said, man, I was wondering when you was gonna invite me. You know, had everybody on. I said, man, go ahead on, man. You know, can't nobody catch up with you. So that was my goal, and I didn't get to get him on, unfortunately. But you know, Masai has always been consistent. You know what I'm saying? It's shout out to Najee. I remember us being in the car together, your man Najee Mujahid, and the two of them arguing in the car. He's like, man, Najee just hard-headed. And I was like, yeah, Najee was hard-headed, but he's moved on to be a great attorney. Shout out Najee. I know you.
Yeah, that's my man. Najee's back down in D.C. He went from a taxi driver smacking his passengers.
Bootleg videos.
That's my comrade. But I just want to say something too about comrades like Najee and comrades like Masai. You know, I've started, and it's very difficult for me to do this right now, right here in Africa, because of my surroundings and, you know, physical stress and health that I'm going through. But I'm trying to write a book and get it out before the end of the year, called A Soldier's Story. The story of the Black Liberation Army and armed resistance to police murder and brutality. And in the soldier's story, you know, I'm soliciting accounts from each one of those so-called unknown comrades who are on the front lines about their experiences, to be incorporated in that. You know, because I don't know every comrade's story in the details and the tribulations that they went through. And that's why I want to give a shout out to all of them who survived. And today we're working, you know, in various areas that we don't even know about, that we don't even see, you know, and they're still there and they're still struggling. And just like people didn't understand how the BLA survived 3 years of racist, murderous political repression. But we survived because the BLA was part of the Black community. And there were those brothers and sisters who who gave up their apartments and helped us survive and fed us and drove us from point A to point B, who were never in the BLA, but who sympathized and loved us. And to this day, many of them are alive, and if any of them are listening to this, I just want to say that, thank you. Your struggle has not been forgotten, and I'm going to try to document this as best as I can. I know I've been saying this for a minute, and I haven't gotten around to really trying to put it on paper.
We already starting without you. We starting without you, man. I've been knowing you too long. You've been lollygagging. So I'm gonna say first of all, we have for folks that don't know, BPM has a book of Dhoruba's speeches that should be released at the end of this year, and the title of it is called "Revolution in These Times." Black Panther Party veteran Dhoruba Bin Wahad on anti-fascism, Black liberation, and the cultural resistance. So some of the interviews you've actually seen will appear, and we're gonna work on getting this brother some money as well, because he owed me enough. So I'm trying to figure out how I could recoup. But I want to shout out a few people too, man, because you mentioned some of the workers. Shout out to our sisters Marva Berry. You mentioned Lee Berry a little while ago, so shout out to Marva, BB Angola, and so many others out there who, as you said, are almost nameless, but their work and their importance to our liberation movement, has inspired me to keep on moving. You know what I'm saying?
Because, yeah, and BB Angola, by the way, wrote a small anthology on Assata Shakur. She's re-editing it now as we speak.
Absolutely.
And it's one of, and so she's another one. She came to work on my cases while I was doing the counterintelligence program lawsuit. She volunteered as a worker, was coming into the prisons. Marva Berry has always been a stalwart in mothering us and sheltering us and feeding us. It's just many brothers and sisters that are too numerous to mention that are still around, that are still, part of that generation that I'm proud to be a member of. I call it the generation that lasted alive. And
so, y'all loud too.
Well, we ain't loud enough, obviously, man, because they got, I ain't gonna go into that. But anyway, I just want to say that to the listeners that that there's that legacy, and there's those comrades and those brothers and sisters who many of you might not even know, might be even your teacher, your history teacher, or your math teacher, who was a supporter of the BLA, who gave us shelter, and you would never know it.
Right on.
But she loves her job and teaching children, and he loves his job in nurturing Black men and women, and they're still around, and so I just want to say to all of them, all the unsung heroes and sheroes, that I'm proud to have been with you and to fought with you in the struggle, and
Hey man, don't be coming out here getting all sentimental and whatnot, man. We ain't got time for all that. You know what I'm saying?
You know me. I don't believe in getting mad. I believe in getting even. So don't start me. Don't start me on that part.
Listen,
then we're gonna get indicted. You gonna get kicked off YouTube.
Hey, they're trying all levels right now. But listen, I'm gonna ask you one more question. But before that, I wanna shout out Jackie Lukman talking about something. If I ever get to meet Dhoruba, there'll be tears. You ain't cry when you met me.
Well, ain't nobody gonna cry when they met you, man. If anything, they be gripping their pistola, because they ain't no
it don't even matter.
I might get a little sentimental because you can do that, when you're my age, and so you can get a little sentimental and stuff, and people forgive me. Say, yeah, man, he's old man right now, But there's, we have to understand that the spirit and the essence of our struggle has been our humanity. has been our willingness to fight for our humanity and for our dignity and for the dignity of our people, you know, and that requires holding the enemy to account, holding the enemy to pay for everything that they do to us in one way or the other. Some of us could bring them to account intellectually and academically by putting forward information and putting forward standards and history that will inspire another generation to take up the fight. And others can do it by getting down in the streets and organizing in the streets. And we all have a role to play. You know, when it's not about unity, it's not about uniformity, it's about unity of purpose and understanding that our common humanity and our ancestors' struggles was not for naught. I like to think of myself as one of my ancestors' um, wishes that when they were being in the bullwhip days, they wished that a black man would come along like me or like you. You understand, to hold these crackers to account. And I just want to say that the struggle now is going to get deeper. The empire is in the is in the throes of decline, and they're going crazy. And we could see the rise of fascism and white supremacy right before our very eyes. And we see genocide being committed daily in Palestine on brothers and sisters. But we also see that resistance of the Palestinians to that genocide and to that European settler state that the U.S. supports unconditionally. So we need to know, and people need to understand that it's in the struggle that we are citizens. It's in the struggle for our liberation that we gain our self-worth and our self-value. It's not in cooperating with the system. It's not in collaborating with our own people's oppression. It's in resistance. It's in bringing to the forefront our cries of freedom and power to the people.
Right on, right on. Hey man, always great to have you on. I'm gonna leave you with I want to get one more question out of you before we let you go, because I think that the main thing about today, of course, we talk about the 55th year anniversary of the Panther 21 case, which ultimately led to a trial. I think that a lot of folks, they talk about COINTELPRO and they talk about counterinsurgency like it ended once the folks ran up in that office in Media, Pennsylvania. I want to ask you, because so many things have happened, because you talked about the counterinsurgency, and one of the things that ain't often talked about is how the state actually formed different types of chapters and infiltrated different organizations, including the Black Panther Party. We know that the Baltimore Black Panther chapter was founded by an NSA agent by the name of Warren Hart. And, of course, it was folks like Marshall Conway who reported that something wasn't right, something was going on crazy, and ultimately he became a political prisoner himself once that chapter was purged and taken back. I want to ask you, 2024, counterinsurgency, do you believe that there's still a high level of counterinsurgency within these movements? Do you believe that there's still movements being started by the state and beefs and whatnot exaggerated and exasperated? What is your angle on that? Because one of the things that I've decided to do, because I noticed that not many people are talking about counterinsurgency right now. And I think a lot of times folks just write things off as a personality difference, or this one don't like that one because of that, so on and so forth. So I wanted to know, coming from you and your angle and being here for the time period you've been, what's your take on it? Where are we now in regards to counterinsurgency? Is it safe to come out now? What's the deal?
Well, it's never safe to come out, but it's always safe to arm yourself before you want, so you don't harm yourself. I think that counterinsurgency has taken on new dimensions because of technology, the weaponization of data, the use of algorithms in order to encapsulate radical thinking and misdirect it. I think the very medium that we're using right now is one of the major obstacles, and at the same time, one of the major instruments for liberation that we have at our disposal. When the Black Panther Party and the radical left were were struggling, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, you
When
good.
the when the Black Panther Party and radical movements in the '60s were on the scene, we had to organize people with a face-to-face relationship. We had to actually get into the streets and hand them leaflets and knock on doors and talk to people and mobilize people. We had to organize tenants and sleep with them so they couldn't get evicted. But now with the internet and technology, it's a global village. It's abstract. We have internet revolutionaries, we have internet gangsters, we have internet philosophers, and all of these things. And so everybody gets to have their day in front of the camera on TikTok, you see, and everybody's a star. So technology has become both an instrument to create reactionary encapsulation of genuine movements, and it also is a possibility to be used to break down separations and borders and geopolitical zones so that people could understand that we have a common struggle. I think that what's going on in Palestine right now shows us, and it showed the world, that the genocide that's being committed against the Palestinian people has brought millions of people into the streets to oppose the European settler state of Zionism and the Zionist apartheid construct. And this has been a major blow to the last European settler project on the planet, and that's the Zionist state of Israel. But people are seeing the suffering of the Palestinian people, the murder of their children, and how ruthless the United States is in supporting and abetting this genocide. And this has radicalized an entire generation. Just like the Vietnam War, once it became public, once every 6 o'clock news showed U.S. troops coming home in body bags, showed the suffering of the Vietnamese people and their resistance. That war was destined for the United States to lose. And it took 20 years in Afghanistan, and for it took 20 years in Afghanistan for the American people to realize that that it was the military-industrial complex, the U.S. military war machine that thrived on war, and the trillions of dollars that was spent in Afghanistan to do what? To lose. And out of that struggle came the so-called ISIS. Out of these struggles came the very nemesis that they created, the very nemesis to their empire. And so all I can say is the lessons that to be learned from all of this is that we have to resist, that we have to stand up against the power of those who control the police state, who are behind the rise of white supremacy and fascism across the world. We have to understand that the reason why we have a so-called migrant contradiction on the southern border and in the Mediterranean is because U.S. imperialism and European imperialism has ravaged the countries of those people and made life in those countries impossible. And so those people are fleeing thousands of miles for a better life. But they're fleeing only because of U.S. foreign policies that have sanctioned their country and exploited their country and has driven their countries to the brink of destruction, whether it's Haiti, whether it's in South America, or whether it's in North Africa. We have to understand that we all have a role to play in bringing down the enemies of the sun who have made this planet damn near unlivable, who because of profit and greed and racial animus has created a world that challenges all of our humanity and our very existence. And so I think that yes, suppression and COINTELPRO exists, but it's on a completely different level. It's on a higher level now because of technology, because now we have the ability at the click of a mouse to communicate to thousands and thousands of people in 1 second, in 1 moment, and to convey to them images of what is happening around the world. We are indeed living in a global village, and we have to question some of the ideals and standards of narrow nationalism that used to motivate us in the last century, and understand that we are all part of this human species and this human struggle, and that it's our common humanity that unites us, that it unites us with the oppressed people in Palestine, that unites us with the oppressed people in the Sudan, and with those who are suffering hunger and disease and famine around the world because of the economic system. I think that, yes, we have to understand that our enemies are reactionaries, the ones who control the media, the ones who control the major institutions of the world. They are bent on making sure that we do not unite, that we do not seek our common humanity in a common struggle. That's their job. And it's our job to send them to the cemetery. It's our job to render them dinosaurs in the history of humanity. It's our job to take this planet back, and it's our generation and our children who will do this, and who will do it in the name of all of us, in the name of our self-determination and our sovereignty. That's what we have to understand. The reactionaries will never quit. The exploiters will never give up their wealth and their gain. They will never stop. They will never stop murdering us. They will never stop misleading us. They will never stop misdirecting us. But we have to not stop at all ourselves. We have to understand that we cannot just mourn about what's done. We have to organize. We have to organize. We have to organize.
No doubt. Stiff resistance. Stay ready for revolution. I appreciate you coming on last minute. You know, I pray that this 55th year anniversary opens up a new paradigm, and that folks are inspired to continue to resist and to fight and to organize on every level that they possibly can. Love you, brother. Stay on point, and we'll see you in the whirlwind.
Yes, sir. It's in the whirlwind that we have our citizenship. It's in the whirlwind that we find our humanity. Yeah, so if you look for me in the whirlwind, I might be gone, bro. But nonetheless, it's in the whirlwind that we need to seek our humanity and our liberation. So thank you for having me on, Kalonji. Stay strong, stay focused, and don't give up this fight. And by all means, hold our enemy to account.
That's why we came here. All right, brother. We'll catch you in a minute. You've been checking out Dhoruba Bin Wahad. This is the Panther 21 55th year anniversary. That is a powerful episode. You need to, if you just tuned it in, you need to go back and check it out. Anyway, make sure you share it, stay on point. We're gonna win in spite of ourselves. We're gonna close out with a little bit more music. I know that as of late, I've been trying to make sure that we get this inspiration, this information out. It's hard body. So I think it's appropriate that we close out with
we ain't vote to get into this shit, so we won't vote to get out. We ain't vote to get into this shit, so we won't vote to get out. We ain't vote to get into this shit, so we won't vote to get out. We ain't vote to get into this shit, so we won't vote to get out.
We didn't vote to be colonized and enslaved. We didn't vote to be tamed. We didn't vote to suppress our rage and be trained. We didn't vote to be driven insane. We didn't vote to be disproportionately jailed. We didn't vote to be nailed to a cross daily and tragically killed. We didn't vote to be the guinea pigs for the birth control pill, or to be given syphilis by the soulless and deny medication while we lie ill. We didn't vote to be the first played, the last paid, and the last saved in the last days. We didn't vote to be stripped of our dignity and become afraid. We didn't vote to end fighting for liberty, for it is still necessary by any means. We didn't vote to temporarily camouflage our poverty in the stupidity of demonic dreams. And we didn't vote on the way reality is perceived, as so many of us seem to be seriously deceived. We only know what we're allowed to see, so sadly anything that's on TV is believed. We didn't vote to give the police the power to unleash a wrath that will slowly devour our people in a bloodbath, surrounding us with the reality of death until there's nothing left. Yeah, you do the math. We didn't vote to be this much miseducated. We didn't vote to be kidnapped, separated and traded, segregated to be integrated. We didn't vote to have our sisters sexually violated. We didn't vote to have our brothers special educationally castrated, to have them both to be later incarcerated, incinerated, left totally devastated, almost dead and forever looked upon by society as the most hated. We didn't vote. We didn't vote for the demonic blockade on Cuba. We didn't vote for the forced trumped up charges on Asada. Got these crackers so mad only 90 miles from America, and they still can't fucking touch her. So you tell me who's freer, now that's black power. We didn't vote. We didn't vote for the assassination of Malcolm and Chad, the torture of Abisu. We didn't vote for the unlawful incarceration of Mumia. We didn't vote to sign his death warrant, so we can't just vote to stop them either. Wasn't it Malcolm who stated the ballad of the bullet? This last part about the bullet we must have forgot, because if Malcolm was alive, he wouldn't have hesitated this long to pull it. And most of these reactionary sidestepping motherfuckers would have gotten shot. Why? Cause we ain't vote to get into this shit, so we won't vote to get out. We ain't vote to get into this shit, so we won't vote to get out. We ain't vote to get into this shit, so we won't vote to get out. We ain't vote to get into this shit, so we won't vote to get out.